Hello and welcome back to the show. It's time now to take our viewer questions, and there are quite a few questions. Our guest today is attorney Tim Webre, and we're talking about adoptions. We're focusing this segment on foster care adoptions, and before we get to our questions, and there are a lot of viewer questions, so we're going to get to those, but you were talking about how children get into the foster care system.
Okay. I think where we left off is like some children at birth are immediately taken. Hospitals are mandatory reporters. If a mother is on drugs when the child is born and the child is exposed to drugs, the child is going through withdrawals at birth, Department of Children and Family Services are going to step in and intervene. If an adoption is not already in place, they will take the child. The child is going to go into foster care. Any child up until the age of 18 can come into foster care if they are abused or neglected by their parents. If they are abused or neglected by one parent and the other parent does nothing to protect. An example, a stepfather molests a child and the mother says, so, be quiet, don't say a thing. Children and Family Services are going to step in and take that child. If generally what the goal is to maintain the family.
To keep the family together.
All right. If they can place the child with a relative, they will place the child with a relative first. If there's no suitable relative, the child will come into foster care. Now that relative might ultimately have to be willing to adopt the child, because if the parent will be given, in cases that are not extreme, the parent will be given an opportunity to rehabilitate themselves. If it's a drug issue, there will be a case plan where the parent is going to be required to do drug treatment and the state is going to require to do services so that they can achieve sobriety.
Right, and just to be clear, that's the biological parent who had the baby taken away. For example, the baby's born, they found drugs in the mother, drugs in the baby who's going through withdrawals. The biological mother is given the opportunity, assuming this isn't her 10th strike or whatever, if she straightens up and flies right, she can get her child back.
Right. And also these are older children too, because we'll have cases children are neglected and at a, obviously at an older age.
You find them in the 2-year-old in the car parked outside the casino at 3 o'clock in the morning, and mom is drunk inside the casino gambling, like we read about in the paper.
Yes.
The state steps in, but the mom gets a chance to get rehabilitated, get off drugs or alcohol, gambling.
More extreme than that, we had the case in Jefferson Parish not that long ago where the baby's found in the car with a dead body.
Oh my God.
And the mom is off, and if it's not an extreme case, the mother's going to get a chance, the father's going to get a chance to be reunited, and the state has an obligation to facilitate that, because we're trying to preserve families. It's very easy for us as adults to say, oh, that's horrible, what this woman has done. Imagine if you are the child and you are losing your parent.
That's traumatic too.
It's traumatic too.
Sure. Well, one of the questions from our viewer says, because you mentioned they come into the foster care system from infants up to 18.
Yes.
So what happens to most of them, or what happens to them if they are not adopted? Our viewers wants to know.
They stay in foster care. There are families that are foster families, and they will raise, they will raise these children. The state pays the expenses. They pay a fee to the foster care parent, and the foster care parent raises them as their children. They are the state's responsibility, and the state has to take care of them. I hate to throw in a Katrina story, but they did a very good job with Katrina. No foster children were lost. They were all accounted for. There was never, but then afterwards we had no foster families in South Louisiana, and we went through some hard times.
Yeah. Another question: is it possible to get an adoption without a lawyer, and what sort of cost is involved?
No, you need a lawyer.
You absolutely need a lawyer.
You absolutely need a lawyer, and the costs that are going to be involved. If it's a foster care child, the state just passed the Louisiana has Faith in Families Act. That just passed this session. the state will actually pick up a lot of the cost for children with special needs. Special needs might not just be children with mental health needs or physical needs, but if you have a case where the children are a little older and it's a whole family coming in, brothers and sisters coming in for adoption, you're adopting a whole family. That's an expensive process,
right,
and the state will can step in financially and help. And the state, on these circumstances, could even pay the lawyer's fees.
Mm-hmm.
They also have a category in which they just call it children that are difficult to find adoptions for, and it's the same thing. And there are various reasons why it might be difficult for them to find an adoptive parent. Now, in terms of the private adoption, that's when things get more expensive, because if you do a private adoption or an agency adoption, first you will have the home study. If it's a agency adoption, you're going to have an agency fee. If it's a private adoption, you're going to have your legal fees. The other expense you'll have in an agency or private adoption is the mother who's giving up the child for adoption, her maintenance while she's pregnant until she gives birth, the medical expenses of the birth, the 45 days of living expenses afterwards. So you could be running up a bill of $40,000.
Well, it can go way up there.
And it can get worse.
Yeah, yeah. Let's talk a little bit about the process, the time that it takes. If I decide to go the route of adopting a baby through the foster care system, what sort of time frame, realistically, am I looking at?
Although adoptions try to be fast, if you're going that route, it might not necessarily be fast because, well, let's assume you have an infant. You have the case plan that the parent has an opportunity to work. You as an adoptive parent are going to be dual certified to be a foster parent and an adoption parent. So you have to first understand that if that mother and father gets their act together, you're going to give the child back. Then the adoption process starts. And then the termination of parental rights, which is a whole other issue which we really need to talk about, because it's not just the mom, it's also the biological father who his rights must be terminated also for an adoption to occur.
Okay.
If in terms of foster care, so there's a legal proceeding which is going to go on to terminate the parental rights of the mother and the father in the foster care system. Once that happens, you're looking at another 6 months to a year for the adoption to occur, probably more toward the 6th month end, once the termination's completed, but the termination can take some time.
Well, I think, you touched on something. This is where we get into the risk when you talk about adoptions, whether through the foster care system or through a private agency. The biological parents can stop this process, it seems like, anywhere along the way.
Well, in terms of the foster care system, if they're not moving for an immediate termination, all right. Now, if it's a severe neglect, severe abuse, the state will move for an immediate termination. All right. There are certain grounds. Some of them are pretty obvious. A parent kills another parent. Well, he doesn't get custody of the children. Right? A parent rapes a woman. He's not going to get custody of the children. Those are immediate grounds for termination. You kill one of the other children, or you put the children at extreme risk. They can move immediately to termination. Abandonment. You don't support your child for 4 months. Don't visit your child for 4 months. Immediate termination.
Can you be rehabilitated? In other words,
in those circumstances, no. The ones I went over, there's no rehabilitation.
You say you were out of work, unemployed, and you were out looking for work at another state. You make your excuses.
You make your excuses, but why didn't you visit your child for 4 months if you have no abandonment?
But forever, you don't get to have parental rights after that?
You can lose your parental rights, yes.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's tough. Okay.
Well, it's tough if you don't abandon your children.
Look, I can't imagine doing it myself. I'm not saying it's a good excuse.
Yeah. Yeah, you're not going to lose your parental rights because you've lost your job and you have no money.
Right.
You know, I mean, and you can't pay child support one day because but if you abandon your children, you will lose your rights.
Okay.
And the overarching thing is the best interest of the child. If you come up with this tremendous excuse that I got hit by Katrina and I was dislocated here, I didn't know where my child was, the judge is not going to terminate your parental rights.
Right. Yeah.
It is the best interest of the child.
And we're going to have to let that be the final word for this show. But luckily, we're going to have another show. Tim, thank you so much. We appreciate it. Lots of really great information. And we will be back next week with more on adoption. So next week, we will talk about private adoptions and the legal issues that many people who go through that route or go that route often encounter. If you would like more information on this show or others, remember you can watch every episode of the show at johnredmannpoa.com.
And don't forget to send in your questions this week, either through Facebook, Twitter, or email. Thanks so much, and we'll see you next time on John Redmann, Power of Attorney.